Hello, you absolute legends. I've covered a lot of cheating scandals over the years, but I've never seen anything quite like this. Normally, cheating in video games is a solitary pastime. In speedrunning, this makes sense, as it's an individual sport. So there really isn't any upside or reason to admit to anyone that you're cheating if you are. And of course, why would you risk admitting anything to anyone when they could at any point in the future spill the beans? Even in a team-based esport, cheating is usually done alone and in secret. I mean, think about the logistics of multiple people coming together to cheat. How does one even bring up the topic? Who is the first person to mention the idea? What if the person you raise the idea to immediately exposes you? There is a lot that can go wrong when you start trying to organize a unified band of cheaters, which is why it is extraordinarily rare. However, rare as it may be, it does still happen. And what happened last year in the competitive strategic FPS squad has got to be one of the most insane examples of cheating I've ever seen. It's not just insane because 7 players in total were caught cheating, but it's also the most insane because the method of cheating is something I've never seen before, and it's the sole reason I've called this video the most disgusting cheating scandal I've ever seen. There are various ways to cheat. In speedrunning, you might splice a video or mod your game to give yourself a bit of an advantage over other players. But what this band of cheating thugs did in Squad is quite honestly in an entirely different universe of depravity. So buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, because you're about to learn of one of the grossest forms of cheating I think I have ever seen. I really hope you enjoy. Now legends, this video is sponsored by the military online game War Thunder, and when it comes to vehicle combat, War Thunder is the most comprehensive game ever made, and is available on PC, consoles, and mobile. Amass over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters and ships from 10 of the fiercest armies the world has ever known. See technology advance from the 1920s all the way through to the high-tech weapons of destruction of the current era. Each vehicle is finely crafted to be as realistic as possible, and of course you can also customize the aesthetic of each one with countless different options. When you combine all of this with incredible graphics and authentic sound effects, you get one of the most immersive combat experiences you'll ever find. Myself, I find air combat to be the most thrilling part of the game, and the controls are easy and intuitive even with just a keyboard and mouse. There is a very good reason War Thunder has now almost reached 100 million players. Play War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox or mobile now by using my links in the pinned comment or video description. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months on PC and console will also receive a massive bonus pack that includes multiple premium vehicles, the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of premium account. It's available for a limited time only, so be quick. So first of all, for those who don't know, what is Squad? It's marketed as a tactical FPS, and it's basically a hybrid between an arcade FPS shooter like Battlefield and a full-on military simulator like War Thunder. There are a ton of FPS elements and more, combined with a lot of teamwork in order to capture objectives and form complex strategies, with teams of up to 50 players on each side representing various factions based on real-world forces. And over the past decade, Squad has been steadily rising in popularity, starting from very humble beginnings to now averaging over 10,000 players every day. And I would say that the community side of Squad is pretty strong, with regular tournaments being held and a very healthy competitive scene. Of course, it's not as popular as some of the giants in the genre, but coming from a little niche like speedrunning, where we are talking hundreds of players on a good day, this is a pretty large community. Now, the reason I'm mentioning Squad's popularity is because it's not really big enough to sustain a substantial esports scene. And generally, when that happens, the developers, which in this case is an indie team called Offworld, will focus more on optimizations for casual players rather than spend their energy on building tools to turn the game into a full-on esport. So naturally, if the community wants to run legitimate tournaments that not only play well, but also present in a way that the community wants to watch, they generally have to build their own tools and mods. The vanilla features in lesser popular games are not always catered towards esports elements. And when you want to make an esport interesting for viewers, you need to create brand new features that don't always exist in the original game. things like specific overlays, and the ability to move across the map easily and have more freedom to use free-floating cameras and show scoreboards and show information that actual players aren't allowed to see during the game. Plus, you can even change the game rules to make rounds shorter or more interesting. And this is what the squad community had been doing for years. They had been creating their own mods, allowing admins and casters to display information that players can't see, so at least the audience can understand what's going on when they watch. And for the past 5 years, the developers themselves had more or less stayed out of the competitive scene. To give you an example of how simple the vanilla game is, in the vanilla game of Squad, this is a screen that players saw when they were spectating a match. This is the admin cam. This is what casters had to work with. It was as bare bones as you could possibly get. It shows basically nothing of use. But compare that to the caster mod that players were using in recent tournaments, which shows tickets remaining, it shows the death feed, the status of the captures. The layout just looks fantastic, and you could even toggle between players' POVs in the bottom corner. So it's just insane how much more interesting you can make tournaments if you have a good modder that can change overlays and design these features. And as a result of this, in January 2025, the Squad developers Offworld put out a request for modders to design a specific mod for an upcoming tournament, this time run by the developers themselves. So basically, the developers wanted to start getting involved in tournaments. I assume because they wanted to build the game's popularity or give something back to their player base. But they either didn't have the resources or didn't care to spend the resources on building a mod that would make the tournament present well, so they commissioned the work out to the Squad community. And truthfully, this makes sense, seeing as the modding community had already made something so sophisticated, which is honestly not that outlandish. For example, Minecraft has a massive ranked speedrunning scene involving a matchmaking system and an elo system, and all of the mods and tools used in that competition are created entirely by a small group of community members. And this is true for many communities and is commonplace. Ultimately, the modders that were chosen by Offworld were led by 2 players called Hash and Tolgadeg. And by all accounts, the mods they had already created had received very high praise from the community. They looked great, they added very useful functionality, and it made tournaments so much more enjoyable to both cast and watch. And if I were to end the story here, this would be a great story. I love it when community members have the skills and tenacity to create brilliant assets that the entire community can benefit from. The people that take their time out of their day to spend energy on improving gaming communities are absolute treasures, and many communities could have and have died without these types of contributors. But unfortunately, the story does not end here. Because in July 2025, after the team Old Continentals won the grand final of a tournament called the Squad Esports Tournament, a 40v40 tournament hosted by Squad Esports, a community-run organization, something didn't seem right. The runners-up in the tournament, called Einherjar, or ENR for short, noticed something didn't add up. And this is where things start to get very, very malicious. The main mechanic that determines if a team loses or wins in Squad is the ticket mechanic. Each team begins the round with usually 250 tickets, and certain actions cause a team to lose or gain tickets. If you capture an objective, you gain tickets, but every time you lose a soldier or a vehicle, or concede an objective that you currently hold, you lose tickets as well. For example, if a soldier dies, you lose 1 ticket. But if you lose something like a vehicle or even an objective, that will result in even more tickets being lost. Plus, if a team captures and holds more objectives than the other team, there is a built-in ticket bleed mechanic so that the team with less objectives slowly loses tickets throughout the round. And this ticket bleed mechanic increases as their control of the map diminishes. The ticket bleed mechanic is important because it avoids certain unsavory strategies, such as combat avoidance once your team is in the lead. Plus, if you're bleeding tickets and losing, it more or less forces you to come up with a strategy to go on the the offensive and recapture an objective, therefore speeding up the pace of the game. Rounds are usually an hour long, and a round will end when either the time runs out or a team is withered down to 0 tickets, whichever comes first. Naturally, a good team is going to use their previous results to find weaknesses in their play and find areas to improve. They are going to rewatch previous matches, identify weak elements, and try to formulate better strategies. And in the grand final of the Squad Esports tournament held in July 2025, in which ENR lost to Old Continentals, i.e. OC, that's exactly what ENR did. Except when they watched the replay, it didn't make sense. By all metrics, ENR played extremely well. They held more captures than OC for almost the entire match. But despite this domination, they only barely held the lead the entire time. And then, as if by a miracle, OC captured the middle objective, gained a huge ticket boost, and went on to steamroll ENR in the last few minutes of the match. Obviously, a good team is going to know when they are playing well. When you play a game for a long enough time, you start to get a sense of how things usually play out. And this final didn't play out like you would expect. ENR was dominant the entire round. But not only did they lose, but the entire round was way closer than it should have been. This prompted ENR to really examine things in closer detail. It also happened to be that ENR had built their own tools to track their ticket count over the course of a round. Their tool was able to track ticket losses based on deaths or lost captures. And what their tool showed is that there was a huge discrepancy. There was a major difference between what their tool was detecting based on verifiable losses and how the game actually played out. In the actual game, they lost far more tickets than what their tool could account for. And after some further investigation, they found out exactly where this was coming from. After each round, the game provides a scoreboard, which tallies each team's kills for the round, among other things. And there is also another screen on the round recap called the Details screen, which specifically outlines ticket losses and what they were attributed to. Some things like radio and vehicle losses will incur much more than one ticket loss for each, but something like infantry losses is rather simple. One infantry loss equals one lost ticket. In round 1 of the grand final, the scoreboard showed that ENR had 239 infantry losses, so you would expect to find around 239 tickets lost. But when they checked the details screen, it showed they lost a whopping 290 tickets due to infantry losses. And this same anomaly occurred in round 2. In round 2, ENR incurred 192 infantry deaths, but lost 253 tickets to infantry losses. This is a big deal, not just because it made no sense and negatively affected the result, but also because ticket count plays a massive part in team strategy during the match. How many tickets you have at any one time will affect how you play. The further you are in front, the less urgency there is to be aggressive, especially when you control more captures than the opponent for the majority of the match, which ENR did. Clearly, something was off. The question was why. ENR immediately flagged the tournament organizers, including the main tournament head, Rycave, who announced an investigation was taking place. And it wasn't long before the exact source of the lost tickets was found. As mentioned before, if you hold more captures than your opponent, they will start bleeding tickets. But what was curious in the grand final is that even though ENR held more captures for almost the entire round, not only were their opponents, Old Continentals, bleeding tickets at 1 per minute, which is expected, but ENR were also bleeding tickets, but at an even faster rate, this time 1 ticket every 30 seconds. But there was absolutely no mechanism that could explain this bleed. In fact, you could even see the tickets being bled in the match footage. Tickets were being bled at times where no deaths were being recorded. Something was seriously wrong. But it didn't seem to be a game bug, because the tournament organizers reviewed over 200 other results, and this anomaly only happened when a specific set of variables were present. 1. The same team always benefited, Old Continentals. 2. It was the same tournament mod and the same mod developers. 3. This only happened when OC were bleeding tickets due to securing less captures than the other team. And 4, the ticket bleed was always 1 ticket every 30 seconds. So at this point we can make some pretty confident inferences. It's pretty clear that OC was cheating, but at this stage no one could understand exactly how. And this is where OC themselves came in and volunteered to help, because OC had the original copies of the tournament mod that were used in the tournaments. And why did OC have original copies? Well, it's because the mod creators, Hash and Tolgadeg, were part of the OC team. And you don't need to be Einstein to know where this is heading. After decompiling the tournament mod, the leaders of OC uncovered that Hash and Tolgadeg had literally coded into the tournament mod itself specific cheats. However, the brilliant thing about the cheats is that they were only accessible by a select group of people. Embedded into the mod were player IDs, and if your ID wasn't in the code, you wouldn't be able to activate any of the features. Well, except for a couple which we will get into after. But in total, there were 7 player IDs that were hard-coded into the mod that had access to cheat codes that gave them massive advantages. For example, as I mentioned before, they could toggle on a ticket bleed that would cause the opposition to lose 1 ticket every 30 seconds for no reason. However, shockingly, it was way worse than just that. These 7 players had a complete platter of cheats at their disposal, such as instantly refilling their ammunition, toggling admin cam, looking through walls, making enemies more visible, and showing enemy tickets. But it went even beyond that, because based on statistics gathered by ENR, the mod even gave the entire team a damage buff, and reduced OC's opposition's health and damage. Now, for those out there who are particularly astute, one question might arise. If they were using cheats like refilling ammo and seeing through walls, wouldn't this be immediately obvious if you looked at their point of view gameplay? And this is where the convenient excuses come into play. Usually there was a global rule that made players have to record their point of view when playing. But some players pushed back on this and said they couldn't record because it negatively affected their performance in the game. For example, one of the mod creators, Tolgadeg, claimed that without recording, his game ran at 50 FPS, but when recording, the FPS dropped down dramatically to only 30 FPS, and therefore he requested an exception to not have to record his gameplay, and this exception was granted. The entire situation is beyond crazy. It's essentially the story of Troy. The modders, Hash and Tolgadeg, created what appeared to be a gift to the community, a Trojan Horse, if you will. An amazing and useful mod that offered features that made tournaments legitimately better. This was a genuinely useful mod that contained amazing features. But the entire point of creating this great mod that the community would accept, even one that the game's developers would accept in an official tournament, was to embed in their own cheats that gave their team insurmountable advantages. And it really did. Old Continentals won every tournament that these mods were used in, including the official developer-run tournament hosted by Offworld back in March. This is truly disgusting. It's already bad when just one player cheats. For example, in speedrunning. It's bad because they steal credit from others and waste the time of others chasing times that aren't legitimate. Everyone here already understands that. But for a sizable group of players to cheat in a tournament that involved hundreds of players and many teams and would have taken countless hours to organize is unbelievable. And also to do it in such a conniving way, pretending to help the community organizers just so that you can get your cheats through and avoid the normal forms of cheat detection. It really is astonishing. This is probably the most malicious example of cheating I've ever seen, though I would love to hear other examples in the comments if you know of any others. Ultimately, the 7 players that were hard-coded into the mod that had access to the cheat menu were permanently banned from the game, as you would expect. The only remaining question is if anyone else from OC knew that the cheats existed. At present, there is no hard proof that this is the case, and the fact that the OC leadership themselves decompiled the mod and exposed the exact cheat codes that were embedded does suggest that they weren't aware and genuinely wanted to help find out what was going on. Still, the entire situation was terrible for the competitive squad scene, an obvious setback, because now these otherwise amazing mods that had made tournament play enjoyable for both viewers and casters had to be put out of service. However, thankfully, there were other skilled modders available, namely Aussie QQ and Mark Lepninski, that have since developed new mods that have built the community scene back up, and it now appears to be stronger than ever. Still, I really can't stress enough how crazy this situation was. Multiple coordinated cheaters embedding cheats into well-made mods pretending to help the community. It's truly above and beyond most cheating scandals you'll ever see. A big thanks to Rycave for chatting with me about the situation. He runs Squad Esports, which manages a bunch of squad leagues. Go and check that out if you're interested in squad. Let me know in the comments if you've ever seen anything quite like this. Once again, a big thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to check out War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile by using my links in the pinned comment or video description. Those of you who are new or haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack including multiple premium vehicles, in-game currency, and more. Thank you for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.